for you. You want to be able to shut down the AD carry from the start.
So the question is whether or not Vulcun can bounce back from their loss to TSM all those weeks ago against this crazy composition. We're about to load up into the game. Once again, just reminding you, on the blue side, it is Vulcun, and on the red side, Team SoloMid. We're kicking off the first game here, week 5 in the LCS.
Of all the things for TSM to bring out, we think back to TSM's history. They've been that team that just plays their standard picks. You'd say, okay, Chaos is playing Corki, Reginald's playing Karthus, Darius is playing Shen, Maokai for the auto. Okay, that's TSM all the time. You don't see them run these crazy unconventional things like they've pulled out here. They're also at a turning point in their season now where they're trying to turn things around, and this is what they've turned to.
The thing that I love to see is that with so much pressure on the line, 6 wins, 6 losses, and halfway through the split, deciding that, hey, maybe we can win it in Champs League. Maybe we can outpick Vulcun, who have been famed for picking so incredibly well throughout this split.
And they're putting all their chips on the table with this one. They recognized Vulcun was taking picks away from them, so TSM was just saying, we're going to bring out picks you have no idea we even have. And we'll see if it works out as they got that one deep ward into the red buff.
So talk me through the start that we're seeing right now. TSM with a very, early, let's call it invade just for vision. A couple of items down the side. Red pot start for that Xin Zhao.
Yeah. TSM wants to punch Vulcun in the mouth right away in this match. There's nothing else they can really do. You're not going to take a Xin Zhao into late game and say he's going to counter the 6-item Zuna's Caitlyn. It's not even a consideration for TSM at this point. So right from level 1, they're going to be looking to make plays until the end of the game. Everything has to be initiated here by TSM.
So Vulcun will definitely be aware of how much pressure is going to be on them. We'll see whether they adjust their early game strats to counter this all-in of Wild Turtle and X Special as the minions are spawning and the monsters at the moment, Xin Zhao's moving top lane.
So we're not entirely sure actually what's going to happen. We're assuming it's X Special and Wild Turtle laning together because it probably is, but you could also create like a kamikaze Xin Zhao and just put bombs on top of him every time he flies into a fight. They are finally going back to the 2-man lane, and they may actually get that 2v2 they've been looking for.
That's an awesome delivery system for Shen and those bombs. Give him the speed buff from Zillion, let him chase in there with an audacious charge, and then have the Stands United come down on top. The scary thing is if that doesn't pay off, it may be very, very painful for TSM.
It will be very painful if it doesn't pay off. This is something that has to work almost perfectly for TSM, and if it does, it is devastating. So we need to spend especially close attention to this lane because this is something we have never seen before in the North American LCS.
So we do see this. I doubt we've seen this lane probably anywhere.
I don't think we've seen this lane anywhere competitively in the world.
Yeah, I would go so far as to say that as well. Right now, Zuna and Bloodwater doing the best they can to fend off this melee monster that is Xin Zhao. The range on Annie will benefit, or at least help a little bit to get some poke down.
Yeah, 600 range from Annie, if they want to, can almost match Zuna's 650 on Caitlyn, but already you can see the Odd One is putting attention towards top. What Vulcun is actually trying to do here is just stall out this lane. They're not trying to counter gank. Zuna and Bloodwater should know to concede farm here. There is a ward that is spotting out the Odd One, and X-Smithy on Zac is nowhere near. So Vulcun is just saying, Zuna and Bloodwater, you handle yourselves. Everyone else, win.
So the question talking about that, if they realize this and they can plan this one out, do you think it's a viable strategy for Vulcun to work towards the late game, stall this match out, and just let their comp do the work for them?
It's not only a viable strategy, it's what they are going to go for. They're going to try to avoid, I feel like, the mecca of TSM's strength and do ganks elsewhere.
So X-Smithy's going to come in, he gets the slowdown into Darius, pops one of his unstable matches, and actually comes up worse for wear in that trade.
That was not the smoothest of approaches there. Darius definitely knew how to turn that around. Vladimir against Shen is actually the type of thing you want Shen to be laning against. He doesn't have to worry about insane lane shove early, and Vladimir's harass doesn't really start taking off until level 7 and 9, so Darius is incredibly happy with the matchups these lanes have given him.
Darius is also an incredibly well-known Shen player, doing phenomenal with it throughout the course of this split. Slow start, you've seen just that one little bit of presence from X-Smithy and from the Odd One. But right now, both Reginald and moving to this top lane.
And this is exactly what TSM wants. They want Wild Turtle to get something. He jumps in on Zuna. Support is coming.
There's the flash, the knock-up onto Zuna. Exhaust is down. First time bomb is there, but there's no knock-up from the Odd One. Second time bomb goes onto Bloodwater, and that is flash burn for Wild Turtle.
And you could still see, though, how ready Vulcun was to just getting out of there and how badly TSM wanted to make something happen there, because Wild Turtle, I would say, went about 4 seconds too early, and it put everyone else on TSM out of position.
And Reginald is caught out completely, no mana. He's going to be able to get that speed buff up, taking a lot of damage. The 90 caliber net, he sidesteps past the Piltover Peacemaker. ManCloud now joins the party as Smithy gets the slowdown. First blood picked up by Sona. Wild Turtle goes down, one in reply. Ignite is ticking. ManCloud manages to survive the potion, keeps his HP ticking away. A Odd One's dropped down to 10 HP as Smithy will be able to get it with the red buff, and Reginald is in a lot of trouble. The flash from Bloodwater, 4 for 0. Vulcun go huge.
That was the best possible thing that could have happened for Vulcun right now. The only thing they could hope is Dyrus somehow gets soloed by Cycle Sid, because after TSM made their over-aggressive play, they were out of chess pieces. So Vulcun turned it around, went right back at them, caught Reginald in transit, and we've seen the communication issues that have plagued TSM throughout these last few weeks. That was Reginald pulling the rest of the team into his problem and getting everyone killed.
So we'll see whether or not Vulcun will be able to make use of this very early advantage. You have to feel that the pressure that Wild Turtle's going to be under in this lane, the moment Caitlyn goes back to spend money, is going to be so difficult to bounce back from.
The saving grace, though, for TSM is that 2 of those kills did go to Bloodwater Sona, and he is not the type of support to build non-consumable items. It's going to put him into a faster Sightstone. You can see he didn't even bother going Philosopher's Stone because he's just going for immediate control. I think the mindset of Bloodwater here is he knows that Vulcun will have this late game, whether or not he invests those 2 kills. So he's investing those 2 kills in vision, which will protect them until they get to late game.
So we'll see how well those wards go down. We do see that Zuna has decided to recall, getting a little bit interrupted by Dyrus. Dyrus has actually moved to the top lane now, so after losing those 4 kills, the 1v1 head matchup has actually been moved to this top lane. Reactionary play from TSM.
I really think that's true, and they want to keep the kill potential up on the squishy targets, which is why they want to be able to continually sit against Bloodwater. But now, it's those counter ganks we've been talking about. Anytime Wild Turtle wants to try to pull something out, it makes them extremely vulnerable. But at the same time, Bloodwater knows, and the rest of Vulcun, that they don't want to take fights that aren't advantageous for them.
Smithy's going to slingshot himself into that lane. Zuna moving safely, and it was defensive play. They realized that they didn't have their AD carry with them, and they ran the risk of being outnumbered, so they hang around a little bit. This is a 2,000 gold lead before the 10-minute mark. Blue buff has respawned, and the Odd One's going to start this one off. Most likely going to give it to Reginald, who's actually just recalled.
And speaking of Reginald, the 33 minion kills are not that great when you consider he was laning against ManCloud. We know ManCloud is one of, if not the best mid laner here in North America, performance-wise this split. And 64 to 33 against a very proficient Zilean player, that's not a matchup anyone has played lately, so you can't necessarily say, oh man, Zilean crushes Jace, but based on this, Mandatory Cloud is crushing Reginald.
Yeah, and that play, that very aggressive dive, they wanted to try to get that knock-up early on, just didn't pay off for them. ManCloud, he's going to pick up his blue buff and just spam those accelerated shock blast combos away and just try to extend his lead even further. Got a fairly early tier, thanks to those 2 assists and that kill. And I'll just be stacking up nicely as Smithy launches himself over the wall.
And I wonder if Vulcan's going to start getting a little aggressive here, because they know that ManCloud has 1,000 more gold than Reggie, and he can support the jungle better than Reginald, which is why Smithy feels safe jumping over the wall and creating this red buff play.
So take a look at the reaction.
He might just go.
Vladimir and Jace bouncing is up. Odd One slides himself to safety, but does manage to get away. Manages to take a massive shock blast to the butt. Gets away a little over 200 HP. But very brave play, and that's a red buff stolen.
So this is going from bad to worse for TSM, because they've lost control of their own jungle buffs already on the cycle rotation for a team that needs to be taking control of the enemy buffs. Right now, Wild Turtle and X Special have been a non-factor. In fact, they've actually been detrimental to TSM's overall strategy because they're investing so much in trying to get them going.
Now, if you take a look at the composition, though, with that Wild Turtle in the bottom lane, he's only 8 CS behind, 6 CS behind his opposite number, so he's farming relatively well.
And I think that has to do with the extreme level of passivity that Zuna and Bloodwater are coming to this lane with. They're not bothering trying to deny farm because they know they don't need to. Zuna will get an advantage on Wild Turtle with equal farm if they get to a point. what Zuna would threaten if he tried to stop Wild Turtle from farming, even though he could, would be the threat of dying and losing control of the lane, which is actually the only way TSM can win.
So patience is a virtue here for Vulcun and for Zuna. They're in the driving seat and they're extending that gold lead even further. It's now up to 3,000 gold as we get closer to this 10-minute mark. In terms of items, Double Doran's picked up for both Jace and Caitlyn, as well as the Berserker's Greaves, just to help stay safe.
And that ward is keeping them safe more than anything else. You know X Special's level 6 with Tibbers, and he wants to flash Tibbers in that bottom lane. They want to go right now, but they can't get the synergy together because Zuna is keeping himself so safe on Caitlyn. Brilliant play.
Such a smart 90 caliber net, gets himself away, and that's the ultimate burn from Wild Turtle on that engage, and it just didn't work out. It wasn't stacked. They've jumped on Zuna. Crescendo's down. Wild Turtles are held in place as the Stand United lands. Dyrus flash taunts, holds Zuna in place. This is a complete tower dive. The Ignite's going to be enough as Bloodwater almost picks up his third kill of the game. The tower did drop in the mid lane though, as members of TSM are retreating.
And even though the counterplay was great by Vulcun there, getting the mid turret, we have to talk about TSM's first successful move. Look how much they had to invest there. I feel like Zuna actually got a little bit greedy, staying in range with his 90 caliber net being down. He did flash away, but he burned almost everything from TSM in the process, leaving TSM open to turret pushes and dives like that.
So Xsmithy slingshots himself over the wall, gets a little bit of damage down into Reggie, takes a tower hit and a couple bombs for his troubles. And that's a third of the tower HP plus that mid lane tower. That's going to open up even more jungle invades for Vulcun.
And it's not only the jungle invades that are opened up, it's the lanes themselves that are being scared away by TSM. They have to be able to catch Xsmithy here.
He's going to flash over the wall, carries on running. Reginald's got enough mana here. Going to move his movement speed up. And Xsmithy slingshots to safety. Manages to get a channel. Mandatory Cloud's the one that's been knocked up in the air. That's a double knockup. He's flying for a year. The Ignite's ticking. The time bomb should be enough to close it out. And boom! Reginald picks up a kill. He even uses the Chrono Shift on Wild Turtle, which wasn't needed.
TSM is getting back a little bit of momentum here because they're catching Vulcun in almost open field battle, which is what TSM wants. If they're constrained to lanes, the Jin Zhao is outzoned. He has not the best use of his gap closer, but if they fight them in the jungle like that, Wild Turtle and the Odd One, they can all pile on to who is now a squishy person like Mandatory Cloud and create the skirmish fights that TSM is better in. If they can get more chaotic fights, they'll be good. But if Vulcun can keep control and not get caught in those positions, Vulcun is A-okay.
What we do see though, Vulcun, they've now reset. They realize they got a little bit of a positional advantage. Started off this dragon. They've also got vision control, as it does look like TSM slowly trying to respond. It's
they
not
might
going
get
down
there.
particularly well. Dragon's up, but Xsmithy's in trouble. Bomb is away. Ignite is now ticking. That should pop him into his passive. His Let's Bounce tries to get to safety, but they may just leave him as the sacrificial piece of flubber.
Wild Turtle wants to keep going because one kill for Dragon is not enough.
So Wild Turtle's going to jump in. That's a great crescendo. Locks him up, but it's not going to be enough. The bomb plus a couple more auto attacks secure a kill onto Zuna. All of a sudden, Bloodwater's now under focus. Stunned up under the tower, and another kill for Reginald. What looked like a game that was in favor of Vulcun swings back in TSM's favor.
And this is the game that TSM was envisioning when they picked this composition. One person after another, tower diving. The chase speed increased for Wild Turtle by Reginald's speed up from Zillion. But at the same time, they've fallen so far behind in the early game. TSM needs so much more of this to take it back in. Even though TSM was able to pick up those 3 kills on a great successful tower dive, it was after the Dragon. So all said and done, TSM is up maybe 500 gold from all that exchange, and actually down a little bit of farm as their other lanes have been getting farmed out.
Yeah, so they're still sitting close to that 3,000 gold difference right now. In terms of items, we see Dyrus, he went for the Giant's Belt into a recurve bow. So a little bit different, maybe working towards a Wit's End.
He's absolutely going for the Wit's End. It's been fairly recently changed. I think it was the 3.7 or 3.8 patch that had happened. It now steals magic resist instead of just giving it to Dyrus, so he's going to be trying to really synergize a bit with Reginald, but mainly just looking to fight against Vladimir while being able to 1v1, because the late game split push might be the only thing that could keep TSM in this if they're up against a sieging Zuna.
Talking about items right now, Wild Turtle got double long swords as well as their Kindle gem, so it'll be very interesting to see where he invests his gold and his items on this AD carry form right now.
Yeah, he's got a lot of options, but Reginald might be running out.
Take a look at that. The hammer gets dropped. ManCloud knocks him backwards. Chronoship is up and available. Xsmithy and Mandatory Cloud immediately back off. They're able to zone him away.
I'm actually very surprised that they didn't decide to activate his passive and then try to kill him after. That tells you Vulcun is only concerned about map control right now, and they don't really care about killing Reginald, even though he's 2-1 and 2 on Zilean. They get the turret, they're up 2 turrets to 0 now, and looking to take a stranglehold on this map.
They've got a 4-man in this bottom half of the map, and TSM is simply miles away. With Caitlyn here and Jace, they're going to put a lot of damage onto this inner turret.
They caught TSM wandering through the Baron area with their superior ward coverage that Bloodwater had gotten them previously with that super early Sightstone and ward investments. Beautiful pre-planned play there by Vulcun.
So 3 towers to 0, they extend that gold lead once again to the 5,500 mark, and they're just keeping TSM at arm's reach distance as far as gold is concerned.
And they're moving around as a pack, which is what TSM actually wants to be doing. So Vulcun taking it to TSM, much like Vulcun took it to Cloud9 in their victory against them.
So a slight difference in terms of the playstyle from the opening minutes of the game, where Zuna and Bloodwater were playing very, very passive and trying to extend that laning phase. Now they realize they have the ability to move, and if they get the jump on TSM, maybe they can win those team fights.
As long as they have backup. Zuna and Bloodwater aren't doing this in 2v2 scenarios against Jin Zhao and Annie, but if they have everyone there, if they have the Zac frontline and the kiting ability of Jace's Gate, that's when they're comfortable roaming around as a 4-man unit. It's just smart, heady play by Vulcun, knowing exactly when they're allowed to go.
Right now, though, TSM have decided to put some more pressure on. They've grouped up. This is a 5-man Team SoloMid that is just grouped in the mid lane. Stand United is available, so even though Dyrus is backed, he can join at a moment's notice. Xspecial's got his finger on the trigger and he's ready to go.
Ooh, Smithy doesn't quite get the initiation, but there's the crescendo!
So there's the Stand United coming in. Let's bounce is up. Wild Turtle dives back into the middle of everybody. Reginald's chrono shift is up. He finally does get proc. First kill is secured onto Jin Zhao before Annie drops in the background. The Odd One's doing the best he can to run away while Dyrus is at full HP. Psycho said forced a flash before the time bomb. Pops on his head, blows him up in the air. Xsmithy now turns his focus over to Dyra. Zuna has got 60% of his HP, has been hardly touched. Reginald did come back to life thanks to his chrono shift, and he's gotten away, but a sloppy fight.
And considering the gold lead there for Vulcun, a 3-for-2 for TSM isn't the worst of things. However, based on the compositions, TSM needs to win fights better than that if they want to win this late game. They still weren't able to take down that turret control. Maybe Dyrus can get something going in the bottom lane, but TSM needs a lot more than just a 3-for-2 in Vulcun's favor.
They're holding themselves at least within touching distance, so if they continue to keep the numbers close, it will be a little, maybe easier for them if they get the jump in the later stages. Locket of the Iron Solaria has been completed as Wild Turtle's first item, and we see Xspecial on his support Annie going for Sorcery Shoes.
So there's definitely a trade there. You can see 31 minion kills on Annie is not support level CS. That's definitely a different lane than we'd normally see here. And I think that item build for Wild Turtle is completely just dictated by how they didn't do that great in the lane. I think he would have went heavily more offensive if they hadn't already turned into a bit of a teamfight phase, where now he's just going for utility and a little bit of damage items. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to get himself involved.
So we've approaching this 20 minutes mark. We've looked at the CS. For the time being, Wild Turtle and Xspecial technically a little bit ahead of that of Zuna and Bloodwater, at least as far as CS is concerned. But Vulcun ahead in top lane and ahead in mid lane. It's definitely in their favor.
And this just has to go with the map control they've been able to create. A lot of times, 3 turrets to 0 will also be equivocal to extra minion kills, just because A, Vulcun has better control of the enemy jungler, and B, TSM is more scared about where and when they can farm, whereas Vulcun almost has complete freedom of where they get to go.
You've seen up there in the top lane as the 4th tower got dropped. Mandatory Cloud was thinking of picking a fight, thinking of getting involved, but didn't make his presence known until the last minute, and right now, it actually looks like TSM may have positioning on this mid tower.
And Xspecial has Flash and Ultimate up. That's always what Annie wants to do, and it's what Vulcun needs to be ready to counteract. There's still not good turret pushing coming down from TSM as well, because another thing you run into when you don't have an AD carry is difficulty sieging turrets unless you're ready to go all in. And since TSM fell behind by 6,000 gold, they're not willing to do that. So this is a very dangerous situation for TSM to be in.
Especially if Vulcun are able to start any pressure. If they can use the range of that Jason, that Caitlyn to their favor, it will obviously help them out. Reginald just going to put a time bomb there on ManCloud's shoulders. That'll pop and chunk him down for a couple hundred. It's not necessarily the hardest hitting bombs right now.
Not quite. Reggie's still powering up a little bit. Archangel's staff, and because of his heavy farm disadvantage to ManCloud. In small part to the roam where the Vulcun got 4 of the first kills in the game. He's just not where the bombs are hurting at. Now TSM trying to get a Dragon because they recognize Vulcan's back. I wouldn't be too surprised if Vulcun can test this a little bit.
So we do see they've got positioning on it. They're trying to set something up. Ace in the hole went down. The pull over Peacemaker is not going to be enough. And at the end of the day, Vulcun just stood back and watched.
And not only did they just kind of give it to TSM, but ManCloud made a run for that top lane. So he's immediately pulling TSM back from where they weren't grouped up. It was a 5v5 that TSM was daring Vulcun to take, and since Vulcun is a really smart team in the way they play, even though Vulcun could have won that fight, it was a risk, and they weren't willing to take it.
It does show a clear focus. They're more interested in towers than anything else right now. ManCloud takes a lot of tower hits in those time bombs, but he's face tanking it just to get his team the 5th tower of the game.
And they know better than anyone that towers completely can win games. TSM has had some very interesting turret games lately. If I think all the way back to MLG, they had a game where they were up 8 turrets to 2, and they came back on. Then they were down 11 turrets to 2, and almost won. So TSM has been in similar situations, and they kind of know how it turns, but still, if you look at the trends, 5 turrets to 0, you don't see many comebacks.
Yeah, it's really difficult. It also, that is exactly what equates to the gold difference right now. The CS numbers are starting to normalize across the board, and you know, with that 6,000 gold lead, it stayed at that value, it stayed at that amount for a pretty long period of time. Distortion Boots picked up, therefore Psycho Sid with his Ghost Flash Vladimir. He really wants to make sure he can run and blink as quickly as possible.
And get out of there, because he knows a lot of times Wild Turtle's going to be trying to bear down on him, and Jin Zhao does really well against Vladimir in teamfight or even skirmish scenarios. But X Special getting caught out by Vulcun has to burn the ults.
Flashes away, Stand United comes down, and as soon as that shield popped up, Vulcun just backed off, so they're happy with that. A flash and Stand United.
TSM wants to go, though, because they have to go in 20 minutes.
X-Smithy's available, the crescendo goes down, they get knocked back. Chrono Shift is going to bring Jarvan back to life as Wild Turtle will be the first victim of this team fight. The odd one gets exhausted, his damage is mitigated. He's going to be the second one to fall. The time bomb's on X-Smithy and he's brought it into his whole team. Vulcun take a lot of damage, but 2-for-0 trade, realizing a Stand United wasn't up.
And I'm going to level with you. That fight and this fight doesn't look good for TSM.
They're going to carry on chasing. The 3rd kill goes down. Dyrus tried to throw himself in there. In the background, we see X Special going down. They picked themselves up 1. Dyrus will go down for his trouble. This is a 5-for-1 trade.
And it could be just another nail in the coffin for TSM. We have to remember, when TSM went into this game, they had to be thinking, win in 25 minutes or die, just fail. And since they were behind at 20 minutes, they forced that fight. They were forced into that fight by Vulcun, so it looked ugly by TSM, but they had to do it, and it didn't work.
So right now, Baron has been started up. This will be completed before the members of TSM can get close, but they are fairly low level, fairly low items, and this is a very long Baron. And we'll be able to get away cleanly at the end of the day, giving themselves a 10,000 gold lead and just a massive, massive power position if you're a Vulcun member.
Whole bunch more than just that 6,000 gold lead they'd held for so long, because the Baron buff gives thousands of gold as stats to every individual player, not to mention the level advantage they now have over a lot of people on TSM. Well, actually they're even, because Zillion is crazy and gives XP to everyone, but TSM, despite giving up a Baron, is in an even worse situation now. They're forcing even harder because it just accelerates from here on out. They know once 30 minutes has passed, they don't have a chance, so they're still trying to do stuff.
It's even more difficult engaging in a team that's got Baron. You see that TSM, they almost got that tower down. Smithy's thinking about it. Let's bounce, and Flash is available. He's going to eat himself a time bomb for his troubles, and that's barely doing anything to that very beefy Zac jungle right now.
And I really wonder how apprehensive Vulcun is going to be about diving these turrets, because they have a gargantuan lead, but they don't have any onus to make them turret dive. For now, they're just pushing TSM far enough back to get the turrets.
And the pressure of X-Smithy alone was enough to make TSM back off. They pick up the mid inner turret and then even get a couple of auto attacks down onto the inhibitor turret. Vulcun are just in the driving seat, and they're not afraid of TSM at all.
And they're going to get Dyrus right now, because Psycho Sid was pushing him back a little bit by himself, and now Dyrus in a whole lot of trouble.
Takes a lot of damage, gets knocked against the wall. Crescendo goes up. That's going to hold Dyrus in place. He will get Chrono shifted up by Reginald, as Reginald will most likely be the first one to fall in this fight. It's actually going to be X Special in the background. Odd One goes forward, trying to knock up ManCloud. In the background, Reginald's popped. 3rd kill of the game. Vulcun is just destroying everybody. That is the 2nd ace within 3 minutes, and this is going to result in an inhibitor.
Right after the Baron, Vulcun goes and finds themselves another fight onto TSM Darius, and again, the rest of TSM comes down to try and help out in the situation, but once again, it backfired.
There's enough time on the clock and minions there for Vulcun to get onto the Nexus turrets. They decimate those turrets. They're onto the Nexus. GGs have been called in-game, and right now, Vulcun with a convincing victory.
24-minute victory for Vulcun. They took the strategy that TSM threw them completely in stride. They handled the Jin Zhao and